I'm taking the team total. I'm taking first quarter, first half, full game, taking it all. OU all the way. I lost so much money on OU.
Whoa, he has trouble with the spin, and the ball is free. Cast starts from all crazy.
And they run through our ass like shit through a tin horn, man.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
What is up, and welcome to Not Another CFB Pod. This is the weekend review episode. It's a very special episode. We're going to talk about conference championship weekend in college football. We're going to talk about week 13 NFL. We got some great results, some interesting things going on. One of the things we got to mention is our guy Coda Capper Beast. Man, the Lions look great right now. How we doing?
Lions look awesome, man. I'm pretty fired up. At least I'm getting something out of Lions right now. They're giving us some hope. I don't know if it's going to turn into anything, but
at least, yeah, you got a little bit of pep in your step these days. We need to get it out of the way though. You and I crushed it this weekend, man. Yeah. High five.
Let's go, baby.
Dang it. That way. Okay, well, yeah, anyway, man, we lit it up. We absolutely lit it up. If you combine Friday and Saturday, I mean, what do we have? 2 losses between us? Yeah, I had one and you had one. Is that it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, man. I mean,
come on.
Just ridiculous. It was a really fun weekend.
Smash this weekend. We hit the pod parlay again. That's 2 weeks in a row, right? Or is that 3 weeks in a row?
It's at least 2. I know for sure.
I know it's 2. I feel like 3. But I'm pretty sure we're back in the green, by the way, on the pod parlay. I could go back and do the math, but I think we're back. I love it. We were both just doing our thing. We got to get to some of this football, man. It was an insane weekend. We're going to talk playoffs for college football, just kind of our brief thoughts. We'll get it more in depth as we get closer to the bowls and things, but just the way things shook out was pretty wild, both Friday and then into Saturday. We even had some drama. And then we'll get to the NFL stuff. So before we hop in to our college football talk, let's talk about our sponsor. The BetCoda Sportsbook is a South Dakota owned and operated sportsbook located in the Midnight Star Casino in Deadwood, South Dakota, serving customers in the state. As you enter the Midnight Star, you are swept into the past with the grand staircase, stunning woodwork, and the elegance of the chandelier. They offer the best lines in Deadwood, so stop by and mention the Coda Sports Gambling Network to receive a free BetCoda t-shirt. Play responsibly, must be 21 years or older to wager. Gambling problems or concerns, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, so Beast and I were talking off camera about what's the best way to lay out this weekend, and I think it's just to go in chronological order. And it needs to be mentioned, we had 2 games going on that Friday night before we had the Pac-12 championship. So first we had that MAC championship going down in that was in Detroit. Excuse me, Buffalo. Okay. I'm being really stupid. Okay, I was looking at Akron and Buffalo and thinking that was that was a makeup game. Obviously, neither of those teams were anywhere close. We don't need to talk about that game. Buffalo won, but so we did have one other conference game that night. We had UTSA North Texas. I had the over. Yeah, never a doubt. UTSA looked great. Shout out to them winning their conference. They've got a really interesting bowl, by the way. It may be the first or second bowl coming up, and it's interesting. And we will talk about the bowls as we get closer to them. As we said, this is kind of more of a recap, but they beat North Texas 48-27, winning the Conference USA. Look at them go. The Roadrunners meet. Okay, so now we're going to talk Pac-12. So here's the scenario. Utah is going into this game as number 4 USC's only loss on the season. It was like a 1-point loss where USC went for 2. They got it, and Utah pulled off the W, So here we go, a rematch in Allegiant Stadium. The first half's really close. It was actually tied going into halftime. And then Utah, man, they just pulled away 47-24, knocking off a team that had a playoff spot, man. It was a crazy game.
Yeah, very wild game. You got to give Cam Rising a ton of credit, man. He showed grit. He showed he really impressed me the most out of that. I think there was a little bit of, dwelling on just like Caleb Williams may not have had his best game. People were like, well, he should have showed up, whatever. I don't know, man. He looked a little banged up out there at times. And
he definitely was.
That defense for USC that we kind of talked about having some issues at times this year, they definitely got exposed a little bit. And it as much as it's funny because entering last week, I was all on board with the idea of like USC would be so fun for the college football playoff. I'm not so sure because if they would have gotten Georgia, they would have probably been the 4.
Yeah,
I think they would have gotten massacred by Georgia. If you just gave up
so
47
physical.
to Utah,
Exactly.
I don't know, man. I don't. I think it might have been a similar result. Like
I think so too. I need you to remind me too the next time these teams play, just take Utah because they're just so much more physical. And we have kind of 2 results that can happen when one team is way more physical. Either they win in a blowout, kind of how the second half went, or they win in a close game, which is what we saw the first time around. Utah's just bigger, badder, meaner, everything. I mean, and they're really well coached. I don't want to take that away from them, but they just imposed their will. They had a guy like Cam Rising at the helm that was willing to do whatever it took. Caleb got a little banged up. They looked awesome in that first quarter. But sometimes this happens with Lincoln Riley's teams. You make 1 or 2 little adjustments and their whole game plan goes out the window and it never looks the same. Caleb's injury didn't help anything. He had 2 total turnovers on the day. He had an interception and a fumble. So not his best game by any means, but tough loss because that knocked USC out of the playoffs. So now all of a sudden we're looking up Saturday morning, we have right now we know USC's out. The other 3 teams are still in, but that automatically pretty much in everybody's mind moved Ohio State into that 4 spot. So that's where we're at going into Saturday. I want to mention some of the I don't want to call them lesser games because they were conference championships, but kind of some of the smaller games. So Fresno State beat Boise State for the Mountain West 28-16. Beast and I were both all over Fresno State. Beast had them on the money line and the spread. I just had them on the spread, but really never a doubt there, especially in that second half. What'd you think from our Bulldogs?
They looked good, man. The thing I was probably most impressed by was their defense. I give Jake Haener a lot of credit. Jake Haener played a pretty decent game, but I don't even know if he threw for 200 yards. He just was pretty consistent, did what he needed to do, but the defense was great. They had a punt return touchdown, so all kinds of things were working.
Yeah,
for
that was big. That kick return touchdown changed a lot of momentum in that game, and that was huge for us. So I was pretty happy with that. Beast and I cashed those easy. We also had Troy, Coastal Carolina. Troy beats Coastal bad 45-26 to win the Sun Belt there. Good win for that program. They scored a lot of points, and their defense is really good. So as soon as they started scoring like that, I knew they were going to win, and I started kicking myself for not betting them. But it was a big spread. It was kind of a weird spread. I stayed away. We also had the MAC championship. This is the one that went down in Detroit.
Yeah.
Toledo beats Ohio 17-7. I believe this was Beast's only loss on the weekend. Mm-hmm. It was just a weird game, man. You felt like 1 or 2 plays goes different. Ohio might have won that straight up.
Yeah, that was an ugly game. That was the game that I was talking about going to. And, I was almost glad that I didn't just because it wasn't the most exciting game by any means.
Exactly.
And Ohio would have lost. So I would have been there with boots on the ground for my bet. And it would have been my only loss of the weekend.
Yep.
So maybe that jinxed me that I didn't make it down there. But, it was still a fun game, I guess, in certain sense. You're right, though. With it ended up becoming a 3 to 3.5 point spread. If they would have gotten a late touchdown or something, they might have been able to cover a couple people's numbers,
Yeah, I mean, it was just like you said, kind of a boring game. It's probably one that you're not too mad about missing. Let's talk about the American Athletic Championship. This was Tulane taking on UCF. Tulane wins at 45-28. I had the over. Shout out to these teams for scoring a combined 35 in the fourth quarter. Ended up actually making a sweat over into a very easy over. It was the weirdest thing ever because going into it, what was it, 14-24, and the over was 57.5 or something, and then it ended up just being super easy where it looked like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to have some things go my way here in the second half. These teams just found life offensively and hit this over for me, but a good win for Tulane.
Yeah, very good win. That was a game that I put in a late play that morning on Saturday morning. I was like, you know what, man, I really like that Tulane team total over, and that was at 30.5. Because I was like, PG's already on the full team, full over. I was like, I feel like it's good vibes. And Tulane obviously had a really good game. I almost feel bad for Tulane in a certain sense because they really kind of crapped the bed their first time against UCF this year. And if they would have won that game, I almost wonder if they would have had an argument for that last CFP spot. They probably wouldn't have gotten it, but they had an early win over Kansas State this year that people forget about. To say, hey, we beat the Big 12 champs. That would have been a nice selling point if they wanted to, get a resume, but they didn't. So unfortunately, they didn't have an argument,
Right. Yeah. So let's get closer to the playoff games here. We also had the ACC championship. Clemson wins at 39-10 over North Carolina. North Carolina, a team that just fell off at the end of the season. This was a Cade Klubnik game. He came in and played great for Clemson. I mean, he's got a long way to go, but he was accurate. He got it done. He's an athletic kid. Good looks for Clemson in the future. I'm interested in them on the next season because I feel like it either goes really well for them or really bad. We shall see. But you mentioned the Big 12 championship, so I feel like we should bring it up.
Yeah.
This was a huge one. So TCU goes into this number 3, 12-0. Everyone was doubting them all year, blah, blah, blah. I was on TCU. This was my only loss of the weekend because Kansas State in overtime wins at 31-28. But you got to give a huge shout out to Max Duggan for coming back in this game because there was a point where it was like I had told myself, yeah, K-State won. They're going to win in a blowout. So I lost my bet, and there's a chance that TCU misses the playoff now. Ends up the TCU finds a way, miracle to get it into OT. A little bit unlucky, I think, in overtime. But shout out to Kansas State winning the Big 12.
No, I think TCU, you're spot on. I think obviously it wasn't their best game, but if Duggan doesn't do that, there's even the situation that maybe they don't get the 3 spot and they get the 4 spot. And personally, I don't think anybody wants Georgia right now. Nope. Not to say Michigan's a great matchup for TCU either, but I do think that actually probably played in a little bit, that they came back in that game. If they lose that game by double digits or something like that, or they really just rolled over in the fourth quarter, I think the committee probably would have saw that. So I think it did matter a little bit. And we love our guy Duggan, man. He's a gamer. He goes hard, dude.
He does. He's a warrior. You could tell after that overtime he was just spent. He had nothing left in the tank. So you got to give a shout out to TCU. Shout out to the Frogs. Unblock me on Twitter. One time TCU football. I called it. You guys were gonna, go to the playoff and all this good stuff. Come on, give it to me. Okay, so Big Ten championship, Michigan, Purdue. Beast Picks was on Michigan minus, what was it, 17, 16 and a half?
16 and a half, yeah.
16 and a half. He gets it done with a late touchdown to cover, 43-22. Great cover for you, man, and a great win for Michigan.
Yeah, no, it was a really nice win for Michigan. Obviously, Michigan, it kind of felt like they were in control of that game for, the majority of the game. But I was at the bar with some of my friends, and, I was pretty locked in, obviously, on the spread because it was a tight one. And Purdue kicked that field goal, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know what I mean? Because they were down – at that point, they were down 17, and I had the cover, and they kick a field goal to go down 14. Like, I understood why they were doing it, but I was like, come on, guys, this is soft. I'm like, play for the win. Like, don't play for the field goal. And luckily, Jim Harbaugh is just an asshole and likes to just go for touchdowns late in the game. Like, there are a lot of people that were on Purdue that were really upset because they were like, why would Jim Harbaugh push so hard? And he did. He was like, let's just go for it. Like, I thought I was going to – yeah, like, I thought I was going to get it by a field goal, but they just got the touchdown outright. Like,
yeah, love to see it. So Michigan locked their spot in as the 2 seed because number 1, Georgia. I was on the dogs. Beast was on the over. That was the pod parlay. The Georgia Bulldogs win it 30-50, 50-30 rather. Beast and I were sending like voice chats back and forth to each other of us barking at our phone in the group chat. It was absolutely electric. Good win for Georgia. Locked in that 1 seed. You could tell Daniels in this one wasn't 100%. Nussmeier ended up playing a lot more, and he had some good stats. Now, granted, a lot of that was in garbage time, but still, I mean, you look at the stats. He had a pretty good game. The future's pretty bright for LSU, but this game was all about Georgia, really.
Yeah, no, Georgia was awesome, man. There were a lot of dog noises going on in the group chat on Saturday, which was good because like we were spot on with both of our assessments. Like we said, we could see Georgia really just kind of pulling away, and that LSU wouldn't necessarily be able to hang around. And we said they could probably put up 50 themselves, and they did. So
all those things,
we were spot on, man. Like that. Sometimes it works out good for the boys, not always, but sometimes.
It felt really good to just kind of check it off. Okay, this went how we thought it was. Okay, this went how we thought it was. It was great. Kind of just another great part of that Saturday. So that was all the results.
Yeah.
Which meant we had number 1 Georgia, number 2 Michigan. Then the question mark started because obviously TCU lost, but also we had that USC loss on Friday. So that slid them out, likely Ohio State in. But then there became the discussion of, well, should it be Bama? Even though Bama has 2 losses, and we already pre-complained about it. We complained about it on the last show. They did not deserve to be in, and shout out to the committee because they kept them out. They made TCU the 3 seed, which, is good, and they had Ohio State as the 4 seed. I kind of selfishly wanted it to be Ohio State-Michigan rematch in the semis, but I get it. And honestly, I like it because I think TCU earned that spot. They were right there. It was a coin flip game. Could have went their way. They were all, the second half, they played much better. So there we go. That's the playoff. So you have the 1 seed versus the 4 seed. So you got Ohio State taking on the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta on the Peach Bowl. We'll talk about that game. So then the 2-3 game is Michigan TCU. Which game should we talk about first?
We could probably go with that Michigan and TCU. I would say probably just because that's expected. I feel like, well, I don't know if it's expected to be closer or not. Depends who you ask.
Yeah, Vegas would have this. I believe it's a 9-point spread or something. TCU as the underdogs.
It's like 9 or 9.5 right now.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tough. I don't know. I want to think the Horned Frogs can go in there. My problem is I'm very worried about their physicality at the line of scrimmage because we know what Michigan's in there to do. They're in there to push you around. And TCU, man, that's not some like SEC school that had a bunch of 5-stars on the D line, that know how to get in. They're a much different defense. They like to fly around, change looks up. That's the matchup to me. I think TCU's offense can score some points. They'll have some stuff schemed up against this Michigan defense that will work. I thought that there were some things that TCU could take from what Purdue did successfully in the championship game. And also, obviously Ohio State laid out a few plays too. They didn't have enough plays to beat Michigan, but there's some tape out there, I think, in order to score. Honestly, the look I might have is the over 59.5 right now. We'll see. Very early to say. I would have to assume, though, the big favorites Michigan end up winning this game.
Yeah, I kind of like what you're kind of thinking with that over. I didn't know it was at 59.5, and I know that sounds like probably a lot to some of the Big Ten fans out there because they're like, wait a minute, like, Michigan's going to impose their will. But like, I think if you think about it, yes, TCU's defense has been better lately, but Michigan's got a really solid offense. Like, I think they're going to be able to put up points. It's just about if TCU can kind of get into a shootout. My only advice, I think, if TCU's coaches are listening out there, I think you got to get Max Duggan out, rolling out, and just kind of running. Because if you don't get him out of the pocket, I think there's going to be a lot of issues with that TCU offensive line versus Michigan's defensive line. Like, there's a lot of Big 12 schools sometimes that you'll watch like a season. You're like, man, like they have a pretty solid offensive line. Like, I don't know if that's TCU's thing this year. Like, I think they got a lot of really good skill players. I think Duggan makes that offense a lot better than it probably would be. Like, I don't know if I would say they're like a dominant offensive line. They're good. Just, I think Michigan's defensive line could make some real matchup issues. Kind of like you said, both sides of the line. That's where Michigan's kind of strength is they just impose their will on you. But if they could get Duggan rolling out, never know. We might get into a shootout, and that's when TCU kind of gets dangerous.
It also depends, I think, on how this game's reffed. Because if they're going to call kind of touch pass interference, I think TCU might win straight up. But if they're going to let Michigan play the physical kind of corners that they play with, I mean, dude, then I think they'll dominate because TCU is not going to be ready for that. We call a lot more pass interference in the Big 12 than they do in the Big 10, I think. So that'll be an interesting one just stylistically. So then we got to talk Ohio State, Georgia. I was kind of vocal in the group chat. This is a 6.5-point spread right now. Georgia's the favorite. Ohio State has the talent to do this, but we've said time and time again, all the holes that Ohio State's game has. I am curious, though, can they get it together for one game? Because I think if they do, if you think Georgia has a chance to be upset by Ohio State, you just take Ohio State to win the whole thing. Because if you can beat Georgia, you can beat anybody, even Michigan in a rematch. You'd obviously have crazy motivation for that one. And it would be, can you imagine the game part 2 It would be insane. What I think ends up happening, though, is Georgia's just got too many pieces, man. I watched them so much. Probably, I didn't switch around as much when Georgia was on. Normally when they're on, they're in a blowout, so you don't sit there and watch them the whole time. I love the way they run their offense, man. They love using those tight ends. They've got Washington and Brock Bowers. Both those guys are NFL tight ends, and they're such big difference makers. They'll be in a set where it's like one running back, two tight ends, and it's like almost like a regular spread offense. You basically just have 4 receivers out there in a running back. So Georgia just causes so many problems. I assume they end up winning, but I think there's a weird case to be made where maybe Ohio State keep this close with their talent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think that if this was TCU versus Georgia, I'd feel a lot, less good, I guess, about TCU's chances than I would Ohio State. And that really is just because you are right. Like, we've seen this Ohio State offense with Stroud and a lot of their, I don't know, like if Henderson's back, I'm assuming he might be back. I'm not sure if he's opting out or not. And Jigba already opted out. He said, I don't want to play, which is it's a bummer. I get why he's doing it. He's a first round pick probably, but like,
yes,
it would add a much different dynamic, and Stroud loves throwing to him.
Even if he was just the threat of like, okay, he's out here, like maybe it's a special play that you know what I mean? He doesn't have to run. He doesn't have to be out there 24/7. If you just had some packages where he comes in, even if he's just a decoy a bunch of times, we've seen teams do that in bowl games where they've got a guy that's super hurt, but he just goes out there and at least the defense has to like, oh, what's going to happen over here? I would have liked to have seen him at least do that for his team, but he claims that he's not allowed. His doctors aren't allowing him to, but whatever.
I get it. I was just I was more just like bummed, but no, I think that Ohio State might be able to keep up. Kind of leaning Georgia, is with the spread, but we'll see. I mean, it's one of those ones. Maybe I come back if the number kind of switches, but we'll see. We'll probably preview that a lot more closer to the games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those games happen December 31st. So New Year's Eve. So we'll definitely be talking those. Going to be a very exciting college football playoff. Just this was the first time that Bama and Clemson weren't in. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I could have guessed with Bama just because they're
it was they're always in it, but it was either one or the other. Basically, neither one is in this year, I guess is how I should say it.
Yeah,
it's either one or the other every single year, and then they've only missed a handful of times, but they both missed out this year. Going to be fun. Going to be a new year. And like we said, we're going to talk a lot about these bowls going forward. I think the first set of bowls doesn't start for like 2 weeks, or I think it's like 10 days or something. So something like that. But okay. Are we ready to talk NFL? I think we are.
I am. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk NFL. It was a pretty fun weekend. We should mention that right now the Monday Night Football game's going on. It's 10-3 Saints, which is interesting, going into the third, and the Saints start with the ball in the second half. So we'll see. I'm on the Saints and the under teaser. As always, underdog under teaser, primetime Peachy's picks. Right now it looks good. We'll knock on wood, and we'll see where we land. Got to talk about the Thursday night game. Bills beat the Patriots 24-10. I loved what I saw from the Bills. Josh Allen was really good, kind of back to his old ways. They found a way, like it was one of those games where early on it looked like, okay, like the Pats were leading after the first quarter, and then the Bills just put their foot down. They said, no, we're still this dominant, AFC East team. Bills win it 24-10. Believe they're still in first place in that division. Yes, they are. And right now would technically be the 1 seed in the NFL. What do we think about that game?
Yeah, Buffalo definitely is one of those teams when they want to show, all their strength, they can. I don't think they always do it, but like when they want to, and you're right, I think they probably realized we can't let this game slip. And they looked solid probably that entire second half. I don't know, what was it? How many points did they give up in the second half? Let's see right here.
Just 3.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, it felt like the Patriots just couldn't get anything going. So impressive defensive performance from the Bills. We know they have the offense, but impressive defensive performance.
Yeah, you're going to need that defense if you want to go far in the playoffs. So that's just how it is. Let's talk about the Sunday results. We got to probably start with the Lions. They win it 40-14. I was on Lions -1. My favorite bet of the day. Wish I'd have put more on it because it was never close, really, from the jump. And the Lions looked awesome. This is what? So is this 4 great performances in a row, or is it 5 with one loss?
5, yeah, with one loss.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're 4-1 through the last 5, and you could say they should have won the game against the Bills. So, I mean, crazy run right now for the Lions. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm trying not to get like too over anticipated because you're right. The last 5 weeks, they've played way different ball. It makes you wonder, like, if they could have pulled off 1 or 2 games early in the season. They had a tough loss, the Eagles, week 1. I didn't expect them to win that, but the game against the Seahawks, they lost 48-45. Like, they had that game against the Vikings where they gave it up last minute. Like, there's been a lot of games the Lions were in and they lost by 1 score. So the fact that they've just rattled off 4-1 in their last 5, I just hope that they can turn it into something, because we'll see. Like, I don't want to get too overhyped because like they could let me down. But the next 2 weeks, man, are going to be big game changers. Because if they could beat the Vikings, beat the Jets, suddenly you're way into that playoff conversation.
Absolutely. They're not too far away yet. They're in the hunt for sure. We have the Steelers beating the Falcons 19-16. The Falcons were a team that could have messed around and maybe found a playoff spot because the NFC South stinks, but they lose and the Steelers win. So there you go. We had Packers Bears. I was on the Packers -4.5. Looked like it was a definite loss bet. We ended up finding a way. The Packers were really good in that fourth quarter, scored 18 points. Christian Watson, I think he's the real deal, man.
Yeah, no, the Bears kind of continue to show us that they're probably going to be like a bottom or like a top 3 pick in the draft. But hey, you're right. Christian Watson, probably his best game so far as a pro, I would say. He's nice, man. And that Packers team, like, they still have enough to work with. I don't really know what to expect out of them next year. Like, they're obviously, I don't see them obviously doing anything this year. They're so far down, but like, could they bounce back next year? Like, could they show us something for next year? We'll see. Like,
right. I don't know. I don't know. This offseason is going to be really interesting for them. Okay, so Vikings beat the Jets 27-22. I was on Jets money line. I was on Jets +3. Braxton Berrios had a catch right in his hands to win the game right at the end of the game and doesn't catch it. Great comeback from the Jets, but come up just a little bit short. It was tough. It was tough because then the Vikings fans obviously gave me a hard time in the group chat, which is just part of it at this point. It's just part of it. I know it's coming. And you know what? Let's just run Lions money line right now next weekend.
There we go. I was going to say, basically, like, you kind of just got to embrace the villain role, especially with the Lions money line. Because, like, I'm not going to be rooting for the Vikings next week. So, like,
exactly.
If you want to just embrace like villain PG, this is kind of like the story.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm not sure yet, but I think that's where I'm at. We'll see. All right, let's talk about some other games. We had a tie. Commanders Giants tie. They scored 0 in overtime. I believe you had the under 40.5, and it lands right on 40. How did you feel about that?
Dude, so like we kind of talk about sometimes like when you're betting and just things aren't going your way. Obviously this past weekend, like you said, both of us were just flaming hot. Like we were not missing things and everything was happening, from that Michigan late cover that happened on Saturday to this one was like the real, like, penultimate of it. Cause I'm looking at this game and I'm like, I'm not going to hit this under. Like there's no chance. And then it just kept ticking and ticking. And I'm like, this actually might hit. And then it did. And I was like, dude, like, this is the kind of stuff that like never, ever happens. I feel like it's always going against you. Like there'll be something that happens, a garbage time touchdown. Usually I'm on the other end of this where I have the over and I get screwed. So like the fact that it worked out, sometimes when things are going your way, man, they're just going your way.
Yeah, you got to love it. We'll talk about some other games here. We had a disgusting game between the Broncos and the Ravens. The Ravens ended up winning it 10-9. So Tyler Huntley, the backup quarterback for the Ravens, ended up playing most of the game, which sucked. Our guy Lamar Jackson got hurt, but I think it sounds like he's going to be fine. We also had the return of Deshaun Watson. He was stinky, but they beat the Texans 27-14. The Browns got 21 points from special teams and defense on the day.
Crazy.
And that's how they won the game. I was on Texans +8, so that's great. Very unlucky. Seahawks beat the Rams 27-23. That Rams first round pick is looking great. I think maybe the next game we need to stop at for a bit, though, is Eagles at home destroying the Titans 35-10. Once the Eagles got out to that big lead, man, I knew it was theirs.
Yeah, that's one of those games where I was looking at it and I wanted to bet the Titans just because we've said we've really seen a lot of disrespect towards the Titans all year, and like they're not the prettiest team on paper, and it feels like they would have been a good spot at like 4.5. But I just had a weird feeling about the Eagles in this matchup. I was like, they're going to be at home. Like sometimes the Eagles, the Eagles are like two different teams sometimes. Like one week they'll like play a really tight game and they'll do something like lose the Commanders, and then they'll do this kind of a game too, where like you watch them beat the Titans down like that and you think, man, this team could be like a Super Bowl winner. So I don't know what to think from the Eagles. They show me two different things every other week, man.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. There's still a lot of games left here. But we're dwindling down the season as we speak. Okay, so another big result we got to talk about. 49ers beat up on the Dolphins 33-17. And this was with Jimmy Garoppolo going out pretty early on. Bryce Petty coming in the game. Crazy. And
Purdy. Yeah, Brock Purdy. Yeah,
sorry.
Iowa State. Yeah.
I mix up my Big 12 quarterbacks because, I mean, those guys to me are nearly the same. But you're right. Purdy from Iowa State came in and did a fine job. I mean, but right now the 49ers are definitely shopping for a quarterback. I don't know. Do you know what the news is on Garoppolo?
I don't. And, I'm not really sure. Maybe they'd think about trying to give Purdy some more snaps going forward.
That's all right.
I wouldn't think so. Like, if Jimmy G's healthy, like I say, you got to try to at least see if there's something there, especially even if you're going to shop him in the offseason. Like, I don't know what's going to go on with Jimmy G, man. Last year at the end of the year, he was saying his goodbyes to the reporters and then he was back. So I don't know what the 49ers are doing with him.
He was like the one guy that we were all sure was going to get traded. Like that was a given that he was going to, and he never did. I don't know.
So I can't even like predict it at this point. I'm like, fuck if I know.
It should be noted too that our guy Brock Purdy, he was the last guy in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, round 7, last pick. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool moment. Okay. Then we had the Bengals beating the Chiefs at home 27-24. It's got to be said, man, there's something weird about Joe Burrow versus Pat Mahomes right now. Joe Burrow kind of owns them. I think I said on Twitter, the Bengals might just own the Chiefs.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know it probably doesn't sound like they held them to like barely any yards, but they held KC under 350 yards. It was 349 total yards, which like people might be like, well, that's not a big deal. It kind of is when it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, that's a really hard offense to hold down. So like the Bengals defense is kind of coming around too, and holding Pat Mahomes to only 24 points. Like that's all you kind of need to do if you have a good quarterback like Burrow that can put up 27. Like, and I know that game probably could have went to overtime and stuff. We had Butker miss that field goal, but like, you're right. They seem to maybe they just understand how to play the Chiefs. That might be it. Like they might just have a good idea on clock management and different strategies. I don't know.
Yeah. No telling. Okay. So one other game to mention that happened Sunday afternoon, that is Raiders beat the Chargers 27-20. Shout out B-Russ. Yeah. Our guy gets a well-deserved dub. Huge for the Raiders. Dude, Chargers, I don't know what to expect. They're 6-6. Do you have any thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, I had Raiders in that game, so I was pretty pumped.
That's right.
Yeah, it was like +1.5. So, I mean, like the number itself, I was like, this makes no sense. Like the Chargers have been much better than the Raiders for the majority of the year.
Even with the Raiders being at home, that line is still weird. You're right.
But I was like, you know what? That's going to be a good environment out in Las Vegas this weekend because you had the Pac-12 championship that same weekend. Yep. I was like, man, I just feel like vibes are going to be kind of high. Like a lot of people are going to be going to both games. Like, I don't know. That probably doesn't play into any of it, but the Raiders played some good ball lately. And I was like, I think they could do it. And they looked awesome. So I was glad I hit it.
I feel like you kind of just like put yourself there. Like, what if I was there? Like, what would I be placing bets on? I feel like that's how you landed on that, but it was a good pick. We got to finish off with Sunday Night Football. Fantastic win for my Dallas Cowboys, 54-19 over the Colts. I had Cowboys team total over 27, and I was mad at myself because I was going to take a prop that was any team to score over 40, which would have been plus 200 or something crazy in the NFL. And the Cowboys, man, they did it every single way. They scored on defense. Dak was good. Zeke and Tony Pollard were really good. In fact, the running backs combined for 4 TDs and I think over 300 yards rushing. So they just kind of did whatever they wanted after that kind of first quarter where people were like, oh, are you worried about the Colts? Like, oh, time to start panicking. And I don't know. I think I sent something in the chat and I was mostly just trolling because my buddy was over. There were lots of drinks being had. And I was like, not even 1% worried yet or something like that. 0% worried or something. And the rest was history, man. The Cowboys looked awesome.
Yeah, when you put up a 54 spot in the NFL, that's not easy stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think ESPN was saying like the Cowboys are now their Super Bowl favorites based on like their FPI index, whatever their numbers that they put out. They think that the Cowboys, based on how they've played, and I get it. Like if you watch the Cowboys right now, they look like a Super Bowl team.
Yes.
They just got to continue that because now, like if you took the Cowboys right now and they were entering the playoffs right now, that would be perfect. But we got a couple more weeks, so they gotta sustain that. And you don't want anybody to get hurt. You know what I mean? Like Dak has his history of injuries. I don't want to like jinx anything, but you got to stay healthy and you got to stay playing good ball. Just keep stacking up wins.
That's all you got to do. And the next 2 games for the Cowboys are Texans and Jaguars. I don't remember the exact order, but either way, it's those 2 teams. So you really want to win both those games. And if they do that, they honestly give themselves a bit of an outside shot to even win the division over the Eagles, who only have 1 loss right now. So we'll see. It'll be fun, but a great weekend of football, man. I was like, every day was just great.
Yeah, I was locked in, man. Even Friday night, like it was perfect because Friday night had that Pac-12 championship.
Yes.
Some of the guys were like, yeah, like we'll do the the live stream of it. And it was great, man. Like it was every night we were getting good results. It was really fun.
Super, super fun. All right. Well, I guess with all that said, we will sign out. We'll have more shows coming up. We don't have many games this weekend, but we do have Army Navy and we have some FCS games. So I guess we could get in the weeds with those, dude. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. We'll try to dial some stuff up, guys, just because me and PG were kind of talking about it. We're like, yeah, this is gonna be a weird off week because we don't really start bowl games until not this upcoming weekend, but the following weekend. So for our college side of things, we're gonna have to kind of get a little creative. Maybe we'll try to get a couple FCS plays
Why
out.
Not? We might have to get our guy. Well, we may need to get our guy Pace and Pumbaa in here. North Dakota State guys. I believe North Dakota State plays this weekend. I could be wrong, but I think that's right. So
yeah, it would be a good spot for it. I think it would probably kind of fill because obviously we'll have our normal NFL plays. Probably I'll probably have a couple more NFL plays than typical. Because like I had 3 this past week. I'll probably try to get like 5 out there on the board at least, just because there's no college outside the Army Navy, but we'll figure it out. We'll have some stuff dialed up. We'll try to at least get creative. Maybe like PG was saying, maybe we can kind of get some different in the weeds stuff going.
Yeah. So it does look like NDSU plays Friday night, which will be fun. And the quarterfinals playing Samford, which I only know for basketball. I didn't know they had a football team, but hey, FCS is awesome. We'll talk about it. Okay. I guess that does it for us on this show. We will see you guys on Friday morning. It'll be a good time. Appreciate you tuning in. Thank you guys so much. Peace.
See you guys.